Give us 1 second. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, I think we're gonna get started here on this one. So we have a couple of things. Fortunately, sports are coming back in safe ways, and that includes, of course, our beloved New Mexico United, who've been playing their season and now have a playoff game tomorrow versus El Paso. So we really want them to win. We're rooting for them. There is a game watch at the Balloon Fiesta Park. It's the drive-in movie theater setup, but on the screen instead of a movie will be the game. So another way we can just come together in a safe fashion and support the New Mexico United. Now, there's a couple of other aspects going on with the United that we wanted to touch on, because you might recall that our state legislature was wonderful enough to give us some funding to enable a real feasibility study for a potential multi-use soccer stadium in Albuquerque. And I want to emphasize a couple of things in that. One, just thank you to the legislature and to the governor for these dollars. We really appreciate it. And whether it's Senator Candelaria, Representative Martinez, Representative Mo Maestas, and the others who put in, thank you for these dollars. And we've put that out to RFP for firms to conduct this feasibility study. And I know there's been feasibility studies done in the past, but there was a couple of things. Those were like initial assessments. They were much cheaper and not nearly as thorough. And they were also for the Albuquerque Soul, which was a much smaller team. And so now this study is actually to try and site a stadium. So this study is designed to tell us where the best location between a 5 to 10 acre plot would be for a stadium. And our request is certainly we have a preference for the core of the city. That just makes sense to have it accessible to everyone and also help lift up all of our city by putting it in sort of the core area. But beyond that, we really want the experts to tell us, where we should go with this. And that's what this study is designed to do. So the vision for the project is really about a 10 to 15,000 seat stadium with a natural grass field that can certainly accommodate professional soccer. But I do want to emphasize that it also has to be a multi-use stadium. So we will make sure that it is available for different uses. It's not going to be exclusively just for one team or one entity. It will be the city stadium. But of course, we hope it's the future home of the New Mexico United. Now, a couple of other facts that I would just mention on this before I bring up Lawrence Rail and his team who've been working on this. We're going to announce the winner of the RFP tomorrow, I believe. We might have it today. We'll see. So that selection process, but there's firms that specialize in this, and so our team's going through and looking at that. But the different phases in this study, as I mentioned, do include finding an exact site. That's really important. And so it's not just conjecture like when we drive around and say, oh, there's an empty lot, that'd be a good place. They're going to actually work on the feasibility of that, and I think most importantly, the cost. Been a lot of questions. What does this actually cost? They're going to marry those two questions and then get us some answers. The last thing I would say is that we have taken some time to look at some locations. We've been to the Colorado Springs is building a stadium for their USL team. It's much smaller in a smaller footprint, but still a nice facility. We also took a look at Denver Stadium, which of course is MSL, which is the bigger league and a bigger stadium. And so we've put together has looked at a couple of other sites too. So we're really keeping an open mind to a bunch of different models. Lastly, I just want to emphasize, I know there's a pandemic going on, of course. And I know that our number one priority is dealing with the pandemic and of course public safety. But I also know we've got to do more than one thing at once. And we also have to think about the future of our city. It is really important that even during tough times, we think about what our city should look like 3 years from now. That's part of leadership. That's part of articulating a vision. So I just want to let folks know, for us, that is thinking about, in a serious way, what a stadium might mean for the city of Albuquerque. But in no way is it distracting from our short-term goals of public safety and public health. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lawrence Rael, but also just wish our United the best of luck in tomorrow's playoff game. And I love beating El Paso and everything. And so we're excited for the United to do that tomorrow night. Lawrence?
Thanks, Mayor. Just as the Mayor said, the city put out an RFP earlier in the month of September. The RFP was out on the street for several weeks. We have 7 responses to the RFP from very well-known, reputable national firms that do this kind of work. So as the Mayor said, this is a work that's much more, if you will, designed for a stadium and a team that is very different from the one that was done several years ago. There are 3 aspects to the proposal. One is to evaluate sites, as the Mayor talked about. The second piece is to evaluate, if you will, the financial feasibility of a facility. In other words, what will it take to operate and maintain a facility, and those kinds of issues associated with it. But the third piece that's also very important is to give us a list, or if you will, of a program of how could we finance a facility of this nature. These are firms that have done facilities for many, many cities across the country, and they'll be giving us some ideas in terms of how they were financed in other communities. So all of that is very helpful information, so that as we move forward through the conversations with the community, with the council, etc., that we have that information available to make a good decision and to obviously at some point present that to the community. So this is the very first step, and as the Mayor said, we're all excited about this team and what it's done for our community, and how it's lifted all of our spirits as it relates to even before COVID, and we look forward to the time when we can go out and see them play again. But in the meantime, this really is a very opportune time for us to do this work, and I'll turn it back over to the Mayor for any concluding remarks.
Thanks, Lawrence. Well, and I think actually we can take a few questions on this, and that's pretty much. So you have questions? Oh, you got to go. It's the mask muffle. Oh, I think we'll just send probably a press release out tomorrow, or maybe Monday if we don't quite get to it. So. Mm-hmm.
I have a question here, but I'm just waiting for my photographer to swap batteries out real quick.
Well played. Nice filibuster.
I'm stalling. Okay, so I wanted to ask, where would you like to see this? I know you mentioned the city core, obviously, but the rail yards has certainly come up as one of those places that people have eyed for that, possibly a stadium development, kickstarting redevelopment there at the rail yards. The question being, where would you like to see it?
I would like to see it anywhere, I think, within a fair radius of the Big I, which of course would include the rail yards in downtown, but also, there's land out by UNM, we know that, there's land out by Lomas, and I think as long as it's sort of centrally located in the city, I think it'll work for our city and it'll help everything around where that stadium goes. But we also know this is why we're hiring a firm, right? What I really want is a good answer. Meaning, here's how much it'll cost, here's the available land, here's how traffic would work, because we also know that if it is near a neighborhood or if it's near businesses, they have an important role too. But right now, everyone's just discussing hypotheticals. And so what I really want is a study that's going to have us actually be able to talk about real options, and then we can take it from there.
One other question came to mind. You mentioned the cost and figuring out cost of all of this. We had heard numbers from $25, $75, $100 million maybe for the stadium. How much, though, would the city be willing to put in? Because we've heard a lot of talk about the whole public-private partnership that this really would be. heard a little bit from United this morning. They kind of doubled down and said it really does have to be a partnership. Pandemic's going on, budgets are obviously far different than they were pre-pandemic. Is there a dollar figure that you think that the city would be willing to invest, or a percentage, a 50-50 sort of thing? How much do you think the city would invest?
You know, I do hope we can do something that is a public-private partnership, and in a way that's what Lawrence Rail put together with Isotopes. And so if you think about the fact that that's UNM land, it's a city-owned stadium, but it came with a huge lease that I think was it 10 years, 20 years? A 25-year lease. So, you know, we'll look to all ranges of options. And I think right now, one thing I would say, because of the pandemic, no one's talking about any specific dollar amounts from anyone right now. It's just not prudent to do that. But we've got to know what we're looking at. And so I hope we can get at least a range of options. So instead of being like 20 million to 175 million, you know, let's at least get this thing within a $25 million variance so we know what we're talking about. And so part of this too is to just really narrow the price tag to something that we can actually tangibly think about and problem solve around, instead of just kind of throwing darts. And I think that's, you know, that's what we've been doing in a vacuum with no other information. Do you want to add anything else on it?
Okay. We have some questions on Zoom. Chris Keller from Albuquerque Business First says, how many responses to the RFP were received, and what is the breakdown between local and national firms? And a little bit more clarification on whether the announcement will be today or tomorrow.
So, question just about some details around the RFP, and I know we will always share all of those details. I'm not sure we can today. We might have to wait till we actually release the RFP, but I'll let Lawrence speak to those for my tocayo over there, unrelated Keller.
So the procurement process really has some real definite structures in terms of what we can say and not say, but I will say that I said earlier we had 7 responses to the RFP. They're national firms. Some have a mix of New Mexico folks, and others are strictly, you know, a national firm response. And we'll see after the community evaluates those responses and makes the recommendation to the mayor. And like we said, it's hopefully this by tomorrow, if not early Monday, but we will have a response.
All right. Any others? Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good weekend.